Scripture tells us that we have a very real enemy. He roams around like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. John 10:10 tells us that he comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. So we're going to present something about your enemy that you will find in your life and to recognize how he's working. He comes to distract, deceive, and divide. There's 3 D's, and remember that: distract, deceive, and divide. And he's been doing it since the Garden of Eden. He came to Eve in the Garden of Eden and he said, he called her to the only thing she should not have been focused on, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And when he distracts her away from what she could have been focused on to the one thing she shouldn't be focused on, he then tries to deceive her, the second thing. He says, did God really say you can't eat of this fruit? He said, you'll die? No, that's not true. You'll actually become more like God. And he deceives her into sinning against the Lord. Why? So he can divide her from a relationship with God. Eventually, he divided her and her husband. They became at odds, blaming one another. And then he wants to divide you from a relationship with the Lord, from your spouse, your children, or other people in Christian fellowship. And he does that first through your mind. He attacks you through the mind. But James 4:7 tells us that submit yourself to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. Romans 12:2 tells us, be not conformed to this world, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So I'm going to present a little side rule for you that perhaps may help you. Moms all over the country and perhaps the world have heard of the 5-second rule. She gives her child a cookie perhaps or something else, and he accidentally drops it on the floor, and she grabs it and picks it up and blows it off. Because a 5-second rule, and still gives it to the child. Why? Because the longer something sits on the floor, the more likelihood you shouldn't touch it or even eat it. I'm going to say that the same thing should apply to your thought life. If a thought comes into your mind and you know it may be wrong or evil, don't give that thing any longer than 5 seconds. Scripture tells us in 2 Corinthians to take every thought captive unto Christ. So you take that thought that of anger, of bitterness, of lust, of something, and you throw that thing right back out. And you take those thoughts captive in honor of the Lord. You throw it out and you accept what is good and pure and right and lovely. But Satan comes to distract, deceive, and divide. You can't let him do that. How do you guard against him? You submit yourself to God, resist the devil, and he will flee.